What's up, everybody? So in this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about the mitochondria, right? This is the thing that is going to make all the energy that your body needs, all the ATP that your body needs, okay? So let's look at this scenario here, right? We have a boxing ring here, and there are these two boxers inside, right? And maybe you recognize this guy. He is Mike Tyson, right? Iron Mike Tyson. And this is just some random guy he's fighting, okay? Who maybe skipped leg day. Now, they are fighting, okay? And we know that in order to make all these movements, just like you standing up from your chair and walking to the bathroom or whatever, you need energy to do this, okay? You don't do this for free, okay? So let's look a bit closer at this guy, okay? We're gonna look a bit closer. We're gonna open the chamber of secrets here. And we're gonna look at his body, okay? We're gonna look a bit closer because we know at the end of the day, all of us, every living thing is made up of cells, okay? So let's put this cell here, because when we look close enough, this is what we see. A cell. If all our cells are taken care of and all our cells have energy, then all our cells will survive, and hence we will survive, since we are only made up of cells. Now, our cells are made up of a bunch of little organelles, right? They have a bunch of organelles right here. We can see the nucleus here, the rough endoplasmic reticulum and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and so on. And then also this little thing here, okay, which is what? This is the mitochondria. So let's look a bit closer there. The mitochondria is very important because the mitochondria, its job is to make energy, okay? That is its prime job. So here we have right here a nice mitochondria that I made, and we can see right now, we can't see inside of it, right? So we're gonna open it up. We're gonna open it up and see what's going on the inside, okay? So here we have it. We're gonna open it up, we slice it open to be able to see what's going on the inside. And we can see it's pretty complicated. You're gonna have to know how to draw this, no worries. It's not that complicated. It just looks pretty complicated. It looks like a mess, but I'm going to explain exactly what structures are going on here and how exactly these structures matter, okay? Because we know that the mitochondria makes energy, which means the mitochondria is very important in cellular respiration, which is the topic that we're learning about now, okay? So let's continue. Let's keep going. We're going to look, since this is a bit small, we're going to look at a picture where it's a bit bigger, okay? So here we have it. Now we're zooming into it. Notice the light blue background. Why? Because this light blue background is the cytoplasm, okay? It's this little blue part here next that the mitochondria and the organelles are bathing in, okay? It's a little the cytoplasm, okay? So here we have the mitochondria inside the cytoplasm. We're going to slice it open, and now it's really big so we can see everything really, really clearly. Let's start labeling what we need to know, okay? So let's start off real simple. Notice how we go from the outside inwards. Look at this membrane, this outer membrane, okay? It's on the outside. So what do we call it? We call it, guess what? The outer membrane. Real simple, right? The outer membrane. Here we go, outer membrane. Now, what's its purpose? The purpose of the outer membrane is to separate what's inside the mitochondria, so all these things, from the cytoplasm so that they don't get in contact, because the cytoplasm has its own structures, its own enzymes, its own molecules. I mean, the mitochondria has its own molecules and its own things, and we don't want it to get mixed with the cytoplasm because it has different molecules that has different jobs, right? So that's why this outer membrane is so important. Now, look at this membrane. Okay, so we have this outer membrane, we have this empty space here, and then we have the second membrane, okay? This membrane is more inner compared to the outer membrane, right? It's inside. So we call this, guess what? The inner membrane. Damn, okay? Real complicated. No, it's not, right? It's real simple. Inner membrane. So we're going to label it right here. What's the purpose of the inner membrane? Okay. The inner membrane has a major function, okay? I'm going to talk about it soon. Let's move it a bit here. Now, the inner membrane, let's first go to, let's first label some more structures, then I'll talk about the inner membrane, okay? So notice the inner membrane is being a bit more complicated than the outer membrane. The outer membrane runs nice and smooth and straight all around, right? What does the inner membrane do? The inner membrane is moving like this. It's making all these folds, right? In reality, it looks much more complicated, right, than the outer membrane, right? Now these folds that it's forming, all of these folds like this, are called cristae. Okay, I'm going to put it like maybe here. Okay, I'll put it here. Cristae. We call them crista or cristae. Okay, it can either be crista, the way I spelled it there, or you can spell it, I'm just going to label it like this, or you can spell it like this. You add an E, so it can, maybe you can see it as that, cristae. Okay, now what's the purpose of these folds? So basically, if I asked you to walk around the outer membrane, say you were small enough and you could walk around it, and then I ask you to walk around the inner membrane. So which one would take you longer? The inner membrane, right? Even though the outer membrane is more on the outside, it may feel like it might take longer, but because the inner membrane folds and makes all these cristae, in reality, it's going to take way longer, right? Now, this is very useful because a certain reaction, which we'll talk about soon, is going to happen on this inner membrane. And the more space there is for this reaction to happen on the membrane, the more ATP we can make, the more energy we can make. And you'll see exactly what I mean by this a little bit in this video and some other videos where I start talking about cell respiration, the actual process, okay? So because it's so long, that means ATP can be made here, 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 everywhere, instead of just in one circle like the outer membrane, okay? So all these folds increase, all these cristae increase the surface area for ATP production. It gives more and more space to make as much energy as possible, okay? So that's why there's all these cristae. Now, another quick thing we need to know is the ribosome. Okay, I'm not going to emphasize on this anything because we know what a ribosome is. A ribosome is a little organelle, small one here, looks like a little circle that is supposed to make proteins, right? It's making proteins. Now, one thing that I can say is that the ribosome in the mitochondria is slightly different from the ribosomes here by the nucleus or inside the cytoplasm, right? Because these are also ribosomes. The difference is their size, okay? So the one in the cytoplasm and by the nucleus is an 80S ribosome, okay? Whereas the one in the mitochondria is a 70S ribosome. So they're slightly different sizes, okay? Notice also how we'll get to that now. The one last important one I want to talk about, two more, is the space in between the outer and the inner membrane. So notice we have the outer membrane, the inner membrane, and then the space in between. What do we call this space? This space is called the intermembrane space. Let me move this around. Intermembrane space, because it is it's in between these two, in between the two membranes, intermembrane space. Okay, it's like around here. It's in between those two membranes. Okay, now once we go, so we have this outer membrane, intermembrane space, the inner membrane, and then we have this. What's this? This light blue liquidy thing, okay? This is called the matrix, okay? I tried to color code these if you haven't noticed yet, but whatever. If you haven't, doesn't matter. Matrix, so let's get another arrow here. The matrix is this little place here. Okay, this liquidy space inside. Now, lastly, also we have DNA here. So the mitochondria has its own DNA. This means if they have their own DNA and their own ribosomes, what does that mean? We know DNA is a code to create proteins and things like that, right? So this means the mitochondria can make its own proteins, right? It doesn't depend on the nucleus and the cytoplasm ribosomes to make proteins that the mitochondria can use. It can actually make its own proteins since it has its own DNA and own ribosomes. So that's also an important thing to notice. Now, last bit here. We know that we care about the mitochondria because this is where cell respiration takes place. Now, this is not entirely true. Cell respiration does not only depend on the mitochondria. The cell respiration, the first step, actually happens inside the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay, it happens in the cytoplasm. The rest of the step, so the first step happens around here, and the second step and the rest of the steps happens inside the mitochondria. So you need to understand that the cell respiration does not only depend on the mitochondria, but also the cytoplasm. So now that we know this area here, all this light blue is the cytoplasm, let's label some very key things. So the first step in cell respiration is glycolysis, okay, the splitting of glucose. And I'm going to put it here in the cytoplasm because that's where it happens, okay? Now the second step is the link reaction and Krebs cycle, okay? And again, I'm going to make a video on each of these, okay? Because all of this is step 1, step 2, and step 3 of cell respiration. This is just to show you the key structures of what we're going to look at. Now, step 2, the link reaction and the Krebs cycle happens where? Inside the matrix. I'm going to put it here by the matrix, okay? It happens inside here. How about electron transport chain and chemiosmosis? It happens by the inner membrane. So it happens by the inner membrane and the intermembrane space, so around here, okay? So this is the 3 key processes of cell respiration and where they're gonna happen. And again, I'm gonna explain all of these in detail in the actual teaching video, okay? So I hope this was useful and that you know now the key things about the mitochondria. Make sure you can label these key structures I mentioned and you will be fine, okay? Diagram doesn't have to be as complicated as this one, but just have something simple and you'll be fine.